Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are cracking open Lithuania's massive 2025 budget. Now I know, budgets can be full of complex numbers, but we're going to break it all down and show you exactly what this plan tells us about the country and about you.
All right, let's just dive right in. Have you ever really stopped to think about it? You pay your taxes, and then what? Where does that money actually end up? Well, to answer that, first we need to get our heads around the sheer scale of this thing.
Get ready for this. In 2025 alone, the government plans to bring in over 30 billion euros. Yes, billion with a B. That is a staggering amount of money, just an absolutely huge figure.
But here's the thing you have to remember. This isn't just one giant treasure chest that everyone dips into. It's much more organized. The best way to picture it is like a national wallet, you know? It's got different compartments, different pockets, each one managed for a specific purpose.
So let's start with who's actually in charge of this giant wallet. Who manages all this cash? The whole system is basically built on four main pillars that handle the country's finances. Now, what's really fascinating about this chart is what it tells us about our priorities. The state budget is the biggest slice of the pie, yeah, at 55%. But look at this. SODR and PSDF, that's the social and health insurance funds, together, they account for almost a third of all government spending. That's a huge chunk going directly to social and health services.
So let's quickly break those down. What is SODRA? Well, it's the country's social safety net. We're talking pensions for our grandparents, sick leave if you get ill, unemployment benefits if you lose your job, all that crucial stuff, that's SODRA.
And PSDF, that's the engine that powers our entire public healthcare system. When you visit a doctor, get a prescription, or need to stay in the hospital, this is the fund that makes sure those services are available for everyone.
So we've got this 30 billion euro wallet, and we know who manages the different compartments. But how does that wallet get filled in the first place? Where is all this money actually coming from?
This chart shows it perfectly. The biggest source by far is the value-added tax, or VAT, at 38%. That's the tax you pay on pretty much everything you buy, every single day. After that, you've got personal income tax from our salaries, a big chunk from EU funds, and then taxes on things like fuel and alcohol, plus taxes on company profits. So here's the key takeaway. If you boil it all down, almost 80% of the state's income comes from just four main places: what we buy, what we earn, what companies earn, and special taxes on certain items. And of course, let's not forget those European Union funds, which add another very significant 13.6% to the pot. All right, so we've seen who holds the purse strings and where the money comes from. Now for the really big question. What are we spending it on? Where is all this money actually going in 2025?
This chart lays it all out crystal clear. The top three areas for investment are Social Security, followed by education, science, and sports, and then state security and defense. And as you can see, Social Security is just way out in front. It's the #1 priority by a mile.
Let's put a real number on that. We're talking over 7 billion euros going into Social Security and employment. This covers a huge range of things, from pensions and family support to programs that help people find work.
The second biggest slice is a direct investment in our future. 3.6 billion euros for education, science, and sports. This is what funds everything from our local schools to our universities and research labs. And in third place, with nearly 2.7 billion euros, is defense and state security. You know, given everything going on in the world, it's pretty clear that this has become a major priority for the nation.
Okay, so a budget isn't just a plan for today, it's also a bet on tomorrow. It's all based on predictions about where the economy is headed. So let's shift gears and look at the economic forecast for the coming years. And honestly, the outlook for 2025 looks pretty solid. The economy is expected to grow by almost 3%, and get this, average wages are projected to go up by nearly 8%. That's really strong. Meanwhile, inflation is expected to settle down, and unemployment should tick down a bit. All in all, a pretty positive picture.
But, and you knew there was going to be a but, right? There's a catch. Even with all this good news, the budget deficit is also growing. And in simple terms, that just means the government is planning to spend more money than it's bringing in.
And you can see that trend so clearly on this chart. The deficit is set to grow from less than 1% of GDP back in 2023 to a full 3% in 2025. It shows a very clear strategy. The government is borrowing money to fund those big priorities we just talked about, especially in Social Security and defense. So,
After all these billions of euros, all these charts and forecasts, what's the simple takeaway? What does this massive financial plan really mean for you?
Let's just boil it all down. This budget is a clear statement of Lithuania's priorities, investing big in social security, education, and defense. And it's our taxes that are directly funding all of it. But the real story here is the trade-off. We have a growing economy, which is great, but the government is also taking on more debt to pay for everything.
And that really leaves us with one final big question. When you have a growing economy, but also a growing deficit, you have to balance things very carefully. It makes you wonder, what tough choices will Lithuania have to face down the road to make sure the country stays prosperous for years to come?